Welcome to our LinkedIn Live event with the topic Do More with Azure Automation and the Automator Self-Service Portal. I want to show you today how the Automator Self-Service Portal can help you to get the full potential of your Azure Automation runbooks. Azure Automation is an awesome tool to increase your level of automation, but there is a little lack of delegating your Azure Automation runbooks to your users. As I said, Azure Automation is an awesome tool to get a high level of automation. It has no initial cost. It has a very low runtime cost, and you can do automation on hybrid, so on-prem with the hybrid worker and in the cloud only. As I said, only to delegate an Azure Automation runbook is not very easy because user has to sign into the Azure portal. You can really limit the access to specific runbooks. And of course, to input some data is not very usable. So Automator helps you to enhance your productivity and to get the full potential of Azure Automation by delegating it with Automator Self-Service Portal. We start with a short introduction and then we switch over to our demo. So my name is Michael Seidel. I'm a Microsoft MVP since 2015. I'm an automation consultant since more than 10 plus years, and I'm the founder and CEO of Automator. Automator was founded in Austria, Europe in 2015. Back then as a web front end for System Center Orchestrator runbooks. Lucky if you still know what Orchestrator is. So in 2019, we enhanced our portal to be used by 4 automation engines. So on top of System Center Orchestrator, we added the PowerShell, Azure Automation, and System Center SMA. But 3 years later, so in 2022, we removed the SMA because it just wasn't used by our customers, and Microsoft didn't put a lot of effort in it. So right now we have 3 automation engines, but no SMA. And today we are happy to have a growing consulting team and happy to help our customers all around the world with Automator and in automating their IT processes. So how does all this work together? So before you start with the Automator, you need the automation builder. You have to build your automation. So you have to build your orchestrator runbooks. You have to build your Azure Automation runbook or your PowerShell script. You use initialized data to put some values into your automation. So that's everything standard to the automation engine. So nothing special for Automator Self-Service Portal. Then you do your automation and you give some return data. Okay, so that's the prerequisite. Then Automator comes in place. So more on the admin side, you create a service, you connect it to your automation you built before, you configure your questions with multiple question types and so on. You can configure an approval. So if your manager needs to approve before the automation is started or some group of users needs to approve, that can be configured. And of course, each service can be limited to a bunch of users, to a bunch of groups, whoever is allowed to trigger that request. And then the end user can start a request. If an approval is configured, the user has to wait for the approval to be done. And of course, the user will be informed about this process. So if there is an approval waiting, the user will be informed via email or in the portal that an approval is pending and he has to wait until the request is approved. If the request is approved or there is no approval, the automation is triggered with the values the user entered in the front end, and you get some return data back. So why are we doing all of this? And of course, one of the most important thing is to increase your security. Because when you use the Automator Self-Service Portal to delegate or to provide a front end for different tasks, different actions, then you can reduce your domain admins, your application admins, your Entra admins, whatever application you're triggering with the automation. The users or the help desk or the IT people don't need to log into the application anymore. He can use the front end of au2mator to trigger those actions. And when you reduce your domain application admins, there is less more possibilities to have any accident errors. Okay. And of course, with that, you can increase the quality, because automation doesn't depend on if it's cold outside, if it's hot outside, if you have headache or not. Automation always do the same way as you made the automation. Okay. And I have one example for classic user on offboarding. If you have 3 people doing the user on offboarding and you have a written down document how to do it, you can be sure that you have 3 different ways how it is done. Okay, because the humans think different, they interpret the task in a different way. So you can be sure that if you have 3 different people, you have 3 different ways how to do it. And with automation, it is always done the same way. And with that, of course, you save time, because you can delegate your routine tasks, your automation, your services to your end user, to your help desk, to your managers, to your departments, whoever wants to trigger a service or has a request related to IT. So you don't need anyone write a ticket and so on. So that saves a lot of time. And if you save time, of course, you save money, because your IT team then can concentrate to evolve your IT, to evolve new systems, of course, to take care of AI or whatever is right now on your priority list on the very top. So you don't need to pay the people to do routine tasks anymore. They can concentrate or to evolve your business and to bring the IT to the next level. And of course, if the user can request something in a portal and get an immediate response, you will have happy users as well. And I see in many customers that employees are requesting such kind of self-service right now. So if they move from a company which had a self-service portal and do all this stuff, they're requesting those things from the new employer. Okay. And if you don't have this, they will request this kind of self-service. So make sure you already have this in place, or you immediately start. And of course, if you increase security and quality, if you save time and money, and if you have happy users, your IT staff is happy, because your IT staff can do things they like and don't need to do things, daily routine tasks, and so on.
So we are now switching to our demos and show how easy it is to integrate an Azure Automation Runbook to our portal. So you see here our au2mator self-service portal, where I want to show you how easy it is to connect it to an Azure Automation Runbook. As a preparation, we already did an Azure app registration for the authentication to connect from au2mator to Azure Automation to our tenant. And we prepared an Azure Automation Runbook with some initialized data. Oh, that's the wrong one. We need to switch to a different one. Just give me a second. I prepared something different. Yes, that's the correct one. So what we did is we have 3 input parameters, number 1, 2, and 3. And then we do some automation in the PowerShell, and at the end we return the result. So to summarize, we're just adding all 3 numbers and calculate the sum. So we do some math. So in the au2mator self-service portal, we are creating a new service called LinkedIn Live Demo Calc. We do the same for the description. We select a service group and we select a nice image. The rest of the properties we see in a few minutes after we are finished with that example. So at the automation tab, we can connect then the service to an automation. In our case, we choose Azure Automation. We select our configured credentials. You can have as much as credentials as you need. And at the run on dropdown, you can select one of the existing hybrid workers. So you can choose if the runbook is running on-premise or in the cloud. And at the select runbook, we select our LinkedIn Live Demo Calc runbook. And those initialized data are now transferred to questions. So that's the same code from that input parameters. You can build your questions with different question types. For our example, we just need integer. We are going through the other questions in a few minutes, but right now for all 3 questions, we configure the integer question type. So we have every 3 configured. And I forgot one more thing, because usually when you trigger an automation, you will then get notified via email or Teams, or you can go to the portal. In this case, we want to wait for the return data. So in our case, we wait 120 seconds until we get some information back from the Azure Automation runbook. So now we trigger the newly service created. We enter some values, 1, 4, and 7. And hit the finish button. So now we see a pop-up saying that we wait for the automation to be finished. And when we switch back to the Azure portal, we see that the Azure Automation runbook is already triggered. It is in status queued. And we also see that the input parameters are filled. So we transferred those parameters, those values the user entered in the question to the Azure Automation runbook here. So now we see that the service is also completed, so status is completed, and the output shows that Azure Automation is doing correct calculation, and we see the same data also in the au2mator self-service portal as a response. So in this case, we waited for the automation until the return is finished, or the Azure Automation runbook is finished. And we saw it there. There's also an option to see it in the history of the My Request. So we see here the job data. And of course, it will be an email sent, or you can send a Teams message to your users, whatever you prefer. So those 3 options you have to communicate back to your users from the automation. So now I want to show you, as promised, the different question types. So I prepared a runbook with 11, 12 initialized data to show you all our existing question types. And we are going through the configuration. As you see here, no special automation, just initialized data. So the first question type is a text question. You can enter a nice name for it, and there are some properties available for each question type, like if it is required, if you want to have a help message, if you want to have a regular expression, a background text, or the visibility condition. So those are properties available for the most question types. And then depending on the question type, you have additional properties to configure. So for the text, it is very simple. You have a text, you can configure your regular expressions, your name, and that's it. So that's for the question type. The next one I want to show you is an option picker. At the option picker, you can enter your options separated by semicolon, and you can select the selection type. So if you want to have a single select or a multi-select, and you can configure the default value, what should be chosen at the start of the service. Then we have a true and a false, so Boolean, yes, no, whatever you want to call it. You can configure the default value, what is checked at the beginning. And here we configured a visibility condition. So in our example, we are referencing to the previous question, the option picker. And I want to show this question only if the option 1 is selected. So remember that in a few minutes, we are seeing the result. And then we see how the conditions are working. Of course, date time is also a question type. So this can be configured in date, time, or time. And for each of those selections, you can configure the format. And that is very important, that the date or date time or both is always sent in the same format to the automation. Otherwise, it would be very hard to automate. And also we had configured here a visibility condition. Now we are referencing to the true and false question, and we want to show the data picker only if the true and false is true selected. Next one is a multi-line. That is very easy. It is a text field, but just with a bigger inbox size. One more thing is the password question type. Also very simple. It's a string field, but the entered characters are hidden. And here we configured a background text as a note to the user, what he needs to enter, and of course a regular expression to make really sure that the user only can send the service if those password rules are met. Okay. Then we have a SQL question type. And SQL question type is heavily used for user onboardings. We are trying to get data where it is already already exists. So in our case, user onboarding, the locations and departments and buildings are mostly stored in any HR database, mostly SQL. And for this, we built a SQL question type. In our example, we have a country table where we get Austria, Germany, or United States. And related to those countries, we have different locations in that country. And the idea is to have a picker to select the country. And then based on the selected country, I want to show a list of locations in that country. So we enter the server name, the database, and the query select star from country. And here you can select what columns you want to see and what columns you want to send to the automation. So usually for the end user, you show a nice table, a nice name, and to the automation, you mostly want to send an ID, a GUID, a unique identifier, whatever you call it. And this can be configured here. Then you can select the selection type, a single select, a multi-select, and how you want to show the data to the users. The second SQL question is also configured as the previous one. And here we have select star from country location where country code equals, and here we are referencing to the previous question. These are our advanced placeholders. Advanced placeholders can be used in SQL and in LDAP to manipulate the query on the runtime. Okay, you can reference to other question types, but you can use the placeholders in SQL or in LDAP query question types. Here is also the configuration on the show columns to send and show columns to show. So what you want to show to the customer, to the user, and what we want to send to the automation. Also single select on how the table design should look like. Integer, we already know from the previous example. A file picker, you can globally configure all the allowed extension types, and per question types, you can limit those extensions further. So for example, if you have a service to upload your user picture to an employee database, it would be recommended to only allow picture formats like JPEG, PNG, or GIF, maybe only PNG. But it would recommend not to allow Docker or Excel files. It would make the automation much, much easier. Okay, and the last one is, maybe not the last, but let's see. The last one is LDAP query picker. Configure the base DN, the scope as you know it, and then you have your LDAP query. In our case, we took a simple one, show the users, and show the values, name, department, title, and we can see a preview, and you get all the LDAP, the users from the LDAP live from the system. So no caching, no syncing, anything that is live triggered against your Active Directory. So that's live from your system. You can also select the selection type, single or multi-select, and how the data is presented to the end user. So we save now the service, and I want to show you how the user is seeing the result. So we see here the service, the question, the text question type with the help message, the question mark on the right. Now the option picker, and you remember on option 1, I want to show you. On option 2, we want to hide something. You see the true and false. And on the no, we hide the date time. On yes, we show the date time. So that's the usage of the dynamic question types. Date time is a calendar to pick the correct date. Multi-line text, you have multiple lines of text, so just a bigger box. The password here, you see the background text with the information, and if you enter some values, you see it hidden. You can see the values entered with the click on the icon. And if you want to try to trigger the service, you get the node of the regular expression. So the regular expression is making sure we cannot send the form without meeting the regular expression. SQL, on the first one, we see the country to select. We select Germany, and on the second one, we get all the locations in Germany. If you do a new one and select United States, then we get the locations from the United States. So that's the idea to manipulate the query on the fly. Integer, put in some numbers. The file question type, we limit it to JPEG, PNG, and GIF. And we select the alarm clock. And the LDAP query, we get all the users with the selected properties from the Active Directory. We can search through the result, of course, and go through the list live from the Active Directory. No caching, no syncing. So you get all that information live from the system. And we're, of course, not limited to any user object. You can do everything what you can trigger with an LDAP query you can use here. And I said it a little bit before, I have one more thing left. I haven't shown you all the question types. We have one more left, and that's called PowerShell. So with all those question types, if you're still missing something, then you can use a PowerShell script for that. And for this, we need 3 more questions to our Azure Automation runbook. And I already prepared something to make sure I have no typo during the demo. So we add question 12, 13, and 14 to the Azure Automation runbook. We publish the changes. And this is also a good example on how easy it is to add some more questions on the fly. So it's not written in stone that you need to go with that questions for the whole life cycle. You can add or remove questions. So we just hit the refresh and tada, we have 3 more questions. So I prepared already a PowerShell script. So you just choose the question type PowerShell, and then you select your prepared PowerShell script from your system. So I will, as I said, I prepared 3 PowerShell scripts already. So I configure all the 3 questions to the created PowerShell scripts, and then we see what is in there and how it is configured. What I can say you until I finish the configuration, we are returning text, we respond to a previous input, and we can return some arrays and custom arrays. Okay, so now the third one is configured, everything is done. So I will show you the result. So on the LinkedIn Live demo service, we have 3 more questions, 12, 13, and 14. And the first one is a simple one. That's the code behind. Nothing very special, but we're just returning a string, but with an input from a previous question. So we rely on a previous answer in a previous question, and we can relate on that. We can do something on that input. Okay. So in our case, we are returning the input of the C question 8. And that's a SQL 2 question. So we get the selected location in the return text. So we need to answer questions SQL 1 and SQL 2. In our case with New York, and our string is returning, you have selected New York at SQL 2. So that's a demonstration how you can get the selected or answered questions input to the PowerShell, response on it, and give some feedback related on that input. And now we see the Vienna. So no double door, no trick. Everything is live. Second example is how to return an array. So we did easy example on get AD user without filter and select the name and the user principal name. This will result in an array with those selected properties, and we can select from our users. We can also search in that result. So we can search again for Jasmine. So easy idea on how to return an array and have a table picker to select. And the last example is one of my favorites, because we are building a custom PS object and return those information to the au2mator self-service portal. So I will show you the result before we see the code. And in our case, we get all the licenses from our Azure tenant live, no caching, no syncing, live from the Azure tenant via Graph API, get all the licenses we have. That's a demo tenant, so we do not have that much. With the license, the used, available, and a calculated state depending on the available amount. So you see here, available is 1, so we have the state warning calculation. So that's the PowerShell script on top, all the authentication stuff and so on. We are translating the SKU IDs, and here we get all the SKUs from the Azure tenant via the Graph API, and then work with each returned result or value and see if the available count is less than 2. Then we add a state warning. If it's not less than 2, then we have a state okay. And below we build our PS object. Okay, so we have information from Graph API and additional a state column. And the result is shown. You see when the available is less than 2, then we have a state warning shown here. So that's the summary of all our question types here. So you can build dynamic forms. You have plenty of question types to make each form as usable as you need and to get the data you need for your users. So you make sure that your users cannot do anything wrong here. You can build dynamic data, so you can hide and show questions, and you have the advanced placeholders to rely on previous answers in your next questions, as you saw at the SQL question type. I want to show you more of the service settings. So we are now navigated to the backside of the LinkedIn Live demo. So you see the name and the description. You can select a service group to group a bunch of services together. You can configure a language to each service. Our portal is translated, I think, to 15, 16 different languages. And you can also configure each service to a specific language. And every user has a configured language in his profile. So this is once gathered from the default language attribute from the Active Directory, but a user can change his language. So I want to change my language to German, so that portal is immediately translated to that language. And now it only can see services which are in my language. That's the idea. So you can have the same service in multiple languages, and each service needs to be configured to that language. So only the Germans will see the German languages and so on. Okay. So the next one is, of course, a nice image. And one of the most advanced thing is, or highly requested things, is an approval mode. So usually when not configured, an automation is immediately triggered when a user hits the finish button, but you can have an approval mode. There are two options. There's a single approve or deny. That means if one person of a bunch of groups, so you can configure multiple users to have the possibility to decide. But if one is making a decision to approve or deny, then the service is gone. And additionally, we have a percentage. So from a group of users, if 51% approves, then the service is triggered or the automation is triggered. If that fails, the service is failing. Okay. And what we have here on both selections, you have a dynamic placeholder called manager. This is then used, and the manager will be replaced in that configuration. So if a user triggers the service and the manager is here, then we get to the Active Directory and get the manager of the user, and that is replaced with the placeholder. So this is very often used. At the advanced, you can select an Active Directory group or multiple Active Directory groups to limit a service who can access a service. You can have an instruction text which supports HTML, some service insights. Those are internal admin nodes, so nobody else can see it. Some estimated times in minutes, so how much you save in minutes with executing that service. a custom response. So when a user is finishing a service, then we show a custom response. For example, this service may take some more minutes. You will get informed via email when ready or something like this. Then the wait for return, you saw at the calculation, and a custom redirect. So you can, after the user is starting a request, you can redirect him to a different page. A recent example is a customer had a SAP password reset. Then we show him the new password, and then he is redirected to the SAP login to log in with his new credentials. That's the idea behind. Automation we saw already, the questions as well. And the history just shows the edit history of the service. So who changed what kind of configuration was changed, and so on. We have some more things here. So one is my team and my profile. So you see here your Active Directory values. Those values can be configured. So what kind of values you want to show. You see your last 5 requests, and you see your team. And your team is calculated by 2 options. One is the managed by attribute. So I see all the crew users, which I am the managed by user. Or you can have a group membership where I am the manager of. So those are all also then shown as my team. So not every customer has the managed by attribute in the Active Directory. So we added the option to have a different calculation of the team members. And of course, of my team members, I can show the profile. I can see the LDAP attributes. What also can configure what kind of attributes I see here. At the My Requests, I see everything what depends on me. Maybe I have to approve something. I'm waiting for an approval. That's in the to do for me and by me. And in the history, a user sees everything what is related for him and what is already executed. I, as an admin, see all the requests. The user only sees his requests. And what is very important here is that this is highly used for our customers for yearly audits to check who did what service, what was the response, when did he do it, yeah? So, and that's the very important thing here. So on our service before, you see the result of 12, the calculation. When we see the reset password from last week, we see the password who was returned, and we see who triggered it, for whom was it triggered, what was the answers to the questions, and what was the result. So once again, that is very important for yearly audits and also for quality management to see who is using what services. The dashboard is a good and quick example on to show how many services are used the last days, the last weeks, the last month, or the last year. So you easily see what are the favorite services, how much they are used. And in the next release, you will also see the saved time in minutes calculated here. In the settings, I want to show you 2 more things. One is the service group. So that's this, at the starter request, you see on the left side all those service groups. So you have to create a service in a service group, and then you have that listed on the left. So you can bunch a list of services into a group and make it belong together. And at the configuration, of course, you can create new service groups. You can add some nice icons to it. You can have a description. And the same, you can configure a language to it. So it's the same behavior for the services. And you can configure security groups. So you have 2 options to configure the access to a service. You have the language and the security groups on the service group and on the service side. And the combination of all those 4 properties or values is then determining what service the user can see. So if he has no access to the service group, he will not see any of those services. Okay. But if he has access to the service group, it has only access to service group without the security group or with the security group he's a member of. So we calculate both. And the same with the language. One more thing at the settings, we have an API. The API can be used to start a request, to get the status of the request, and to deny or approve a request, a service, okay? And this can be used by an API. A lot of customers using the API as an addition to easily start a service via API and not start the automation in Azure via API. So that's a little bit not so easy. One more thing left. You can start the request with pre-filled parameters. So we have in the GUI a help to build the URL. And so you can fill out the form, you can copy the URL, and if you paste it into your browser, you will directly be at the service at start the request, pre-filled the parameters, okay? So in the GUI, we help you to build the URL. So you can send a link to a user with some pre-filled parameters and the rest will be filled by him. But you can also remove those pre-filled parameters. So you have a direct link to each service. So you don't have to click start a request and search for it. You can have a unique URL link to every service. We have a lot more, but I think for the live event today, that's enough to summarize what we have seen. You can easily connect au2mator self-service portal to your Azure Automation account. You can easily connect an Azure Automation runbook graphically or scripting, PS5, PS7.1, PS7.2, it doesn't matter. So you can have plenty of options related to the question types. And if those are not enough, you can use the PowerShell question types. You can have dynamic forms. So based on previous answers, you can hide or show questions. You can have advanced placeholders for SQL and LDAP queries to manipulate the query on the fly. And that's the idea. That's the reason, or that's the advantage of using the au2mator self-service portal with Azure Automation.
We are now coming to the end of our LinkedIn Live event. As the next concrete steps, we offer free initial consultation in which we will look at your potential together. We offer a unique QR code and link so you can directly book an appointment in my calendar for free for the first interview. And in this, we can clarify further details and respond individually to your requirements. So hope to see or hear you in the next days. Thank you for visiting and listening to our LinkedIn Live. And thank you and enjoy your day. Bye-bye.